Ever wonder how the Wild West earned its notorious reputation for lawlessness and outlaws? Picture this. The mid-19th century, a time of tumult, transition, and opportunity. An era that stretched roughly from the 1850s to the turn of the 20th century, etched in the annals of American history as the Wild West. This was a time when the western frontier of the United States was expanding, and with it, a legendary epic was unfolding. The Wild West, it was a land of contrasts, where civilization met wilderness, where law tangled with chaos. It was as much about the promise of prosperity as it was about the lure of lawlessness, a realm where the rule of law often seemed as remote as the vast, uncharted territories it sought to govern. Now you might be thinking, wasn't the Wild West a dangerous place, teeming with outlaws and bandits? Well, that's not entirely a myth. The era did see the rise of notorious outlaws, men and women who became legends in their own lifetimes. Figures like Jesse James, Billy the Kid, and Belle Starr, who became as famous or infamous, depending on your perspective, as the sheriffs and marshals who pursued them. Yet, it would be a mistake to paint the entire Wild West with the broad brush of lawlessness. While it was true that crime and violence were part of the landscape, so too were the tireless efforts of lawmen striving to bring order to the chaos. The Wild West was, in essence, a complex tapestry woven with threads of both law and disorder, where the rule of the gun often walked hand in hand with the rule of law. It was an era that was as much about the struggle for justice as it was about the allure of the outlaw. So was the Wild West a land of outlaws or a land of law and order? The answer, as with many things in history, is not black and white, but rather a fascinating shade of gray. Let's delve into some extraordinary facts that shaped this fascinating era. Did you know that it was common for lawmen to prop up dead outlaws and pose with them for photos? This macabre tradition, as unsettling as it may sound to our modern sensibilities, was a widespread practice in the Wild West. But what was the purpose of these deathly portraits? Well, it was a combination of things. Primarily it served as a form of documentation, a way to confirm that a notorious criminal had indeed met their end. Remember, this was a time before digital databases and fingerprint identification. A photograph of a deceased outlaw was tangible proof that justice had been served. However, there was another, more psychological reason behind these morbid mementos. They were a means of demonstrating the power and control of law enforcement. In a land where lawlessness was often the norm, these images sent a clear message to other potential wrongdoers. Cross the line, and you could be next. Now, let's touch on some specific instances of this practice. Perhaps the most famous example is that of the notorious Jesse James. After his assassination in 1882, he was laid out for all to see, and photographs were taken. These pictures were then sold as souvenirs, a grim reminder of his criminal past and violent end. Another instance involved the Dalton Gang, a group of outlaws known for their daring bank and train robberies. After a failed bank heist in 1892, left most of them dead. Their bodies were displayed in the town square of Coffeyville, Kansas. A photograph was taken of the grisly tableau, serving as a stark testament to the perils of a life of crime. In the end, these images, as macabre as they are, provide us with a unique glimpse into the past. They serve as a chilling reminder of the grim reality of life and death in the Wild West. Opening. How accurate was the movie The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford compared to the real events? Well, let's delve into the history books and find out. The film, released in 2007, tells the story of the infamous outlaw Jesse James and his eventual assassination by Robert Ford. But how much of this cinematic tale is rooted in reality, and how much is pure Hollywood invention? Jesse James, a notorious outlaw of the Wild West, was indeed killed by Robert Ford, a member of his gang. The film largely sticks to this fact, however it paints a romanticized image of Jesse James, focusing more on his charisma and less on the crimes he committed. Historical accounts, on the other hand, do not shy away from portraying James as a ruthless and violent criminal. The film also suggests a close camaraderie between James and Ford, which many historians dispute. In reality, Ford was a newcomer to the James gang, and his relationship with Jesse was tenuous at best. The motive behind the assassination, as portrayed in the film, is also a subject of debate among historians. While the movie suggests that Ford killed James for fame and a reward, Some historical sources suggest that Ford might have acted out of fear for his own life. Additionally, the film's depiction of the Wild West is decidedly more romantic and less brutal than what historical accounts suggest. The West was not just about gunfights and outlaws, it was also about survival, hardship, and the relentless pursuit of a better life. So while the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford offers a compelling narrative and captivating performances, it is, like many Hollywood productions, a dramatized interpretation of the past. The characters and events are based on real people and happenings, but the film takes liberties with the truth to create a more engaging story. Closing. As we can see, Hollywood's portrayal of the Wild West can sometimes blur the lines between fact and fiction. Would it surprise you to learn that Texas had the most gunfighting out of any Western state? When we think of the Wild West, we often envision cowboys, outlaws, and high-noon shootouts. However, the reality of the situation is a bit more complex. The Wild West was indeed a time of lawlessness and violence, but it was also a period of growth and expansion. And while many states have their own tales of gun-toting outlaws and lawmen, Texas stands out as the state with the most recorded gunfights. In fact, between the years of 1850 and 1900, Texas was home to a staggering 160 shootouts. That's right, 160. Now, to paint a clearer picture, let's compare this to other Western states during the same period. California, famous for its gold rush and the resulting influx of fortune seekers, had a significantly lower number of gunfights. Even Arizona, the state that gave us the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral, pales in comparison to the Lone Star State. But why was Texas such a hotspot for gunfights? Well, there are a few theories. Some historians suggest that Texas's size and diverse population played a role. Others point to the state's turbulent history, which included wars with Mexico, clashes with Native American tribes, and the lawlessness of the frontier itself. Regardless of the reasons, it's clear that Texas was a place where the quick-draw culture of the Wild West was very much alive. It was a time and place where disputes were often settled, not in courtrooms, but in the dusty streets under the blistering sun, with the crack of gunfire echoing off the wooden buildings. So the next time you watch a Western movie or read a tale of gunslinging outlaws, remember that the state with the most real-life shootouts wasn't Arizona or California, but Texas. The spirit of the Wild West was truly alive and well in Texas. We've journeyed through some extraordinary facts about the Wild West today. We started off by painting a picture of a land that teetered on the edge of law and order, a place where outlaws and lawmen were often one and the same. We then delved into a macabre tradition that seems unimaginable in our modern world, the practice of propping up deceased outlaws for photographs. Lawmen, eager to showcase their victories, would pose with the lifeless bodies, creating a chilling tableau of death and triumph. This eerie tradition served as a stark reminder of the grim reality of life and death on the frontier. Our journey continued with a look at the real story behind the cinematic portrayal of Jesse James' assassination. The movie, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, painted a dramatic and romanticized picture. Yet the reality was far from it. The outlaw's death was less a moment of high drama and more a grim end to a life on the run. It's a stark reminder that the glamour of Hollywood often veils the harsh truths of history. Finally, we ventured into the state of Texas, a place that saw more gunfights than any other Western state. Between the years of 1850 and 1900, 160 shootouts occurred in Texas. This figure dwarfs the number of gunfights in other states, underscoring Texas's reputation as a hotbed of violence and lawlessness. We've traveled through time today, unearthing some of the lesser-known aspects of the Wild West, yet these are but a few threads in the rich tapestry that makes up the history of this fascinating era. The Wild West was a time of outlaws and lawmen, of violence and bravery, of death and survival. And with that, we've unraveled a bit more of the mystery that is the Wild West. Here's to the outlaws, the lawmen, and the daring spirit of an era that continues to captivate us.